What's going on, guys? Welcome to HITtalks, baseball's mental performance podcast. In this episode, we got the baseball doctor returning to the show. The baseball doctor is a 17-year hitting coach and instructor at Hardball Academy out of Pearland, Texas. This podcast episode is going to be broken into two parts. In part two of this podcast, we discuss killer instinct. Be sure to follow the baseball doctor on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. The info is in the description below. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Josh Cathcart, aka Baseball Doctor.
This killer instinct, you got, and I didn't even think about this when we started talking about it. Now we got the Michael Jordan Last Dance thing out. So the killer instinct, and obviously Michael Jordan is in a class all by himself. He's up there with the Kobe Bryants of the world, and those guys that are just those animals that you can't even comprehend how competitive they are. And I'm always interested when I get my younger, again, 12, 13, 14-year-old kids, and you see such a discrepancy in competitive nature. You see these kids that it's almost like if they hit the baseball too hard, they're hurting the baseball. Those really soft, fragile, like, I don't want to hurt anybody kids. And then you get those kids that it's like, I don't care who you are, I'm going to just annihilate you. And obviously they don't know how to control those emotions, right? They're hyper competitive. And I remember growing up feeling that way. Like, just, you're not going to beat me at anything. It doesn't matter what it is, you're not going to beat me. Now, I didn't have the physical ability to back that up. I got beat all the time at things, but that was my mentality.
Yeah.
But I didn't come from a dad or mom that was hyper competitive or, push me to be the best at everything. They wanted me to have fun. They wanted me to be good. They wanted me to, if I was going to do something, to work hard at it. But it wasn't, this hyper competitive environment that I was raised in. That was just something that I always remember having. And so I wonder when I look at these kids and they don't have it, and it's like, even when they get beat, it's like it doesn't make them mad or whatever the case is, does that just mean that you're not ever going to be a really competitive person? Does that mean that you just don't show it on the outside? Like, I try to understand these kids and try to hit the right buttons to get that. It doesn't have to be outwardly aggressive, but just that inner fire to compete. And I wonder how much of that is you're born with it, how much of it is the environment, and then how much is molded over time. Because anybody that plays for me, I feel like if it is molded by watching the people that are around you, like any kid that plays for me and ever steps on the diamond for me should feed off of that. And they don't. Some of them are just still, hey, we're happy to be here, whatever. And so trying to mesh those personalities and everything is something that I don't struggle with. I'm very interested to learn how to do it better and what's going on with people from a competitive, thought process.
I wish I knew for certain. None of it is for certain, right? Everybody's going to be different, and that's the biggest challenge of being a coach, which, like you said, it's you're interested in it and getting better. And me, same thing for me. It's like I didn't really I got to the point I wanted to be a coach when I started to find that interesting. It's like, oh, this is interesting. I see the differences, but I also see the similarities in some of these kids. And yeah, there is a huge mentality differential spectrum in terms of, like you said, having that killer instinct, or like the be killed instinct, it seems like, and the lion or the sheep kind of thing. And I do think, and again, this is just my opinion, obviously I don't have anything solid to back it up, but I do think that there's a little bit in, maybe genetics and just you're born with. But then I think you could also be born with it. and then it kind of get trained out of you over time.
Yeah.
But then I think you could also have maybe be someone that doesn't have as much like natural competitiveness, but it gets trained into you over time. So I do think there's definitely, it can be, you know, I don't know, I guess you could say developed, or it could grow someone's competitiveness, but also it might just be because they don't really enjoy or don't really want it. See, the guys that are
Yeah.
competitive, you want it in that moment. You want to succeed. If you're a hitter and there's a pitcher on the mound, you want to succeed against him really, really badly. That you're gonna bring the fire. That you're not backing down. And you know, if you don't really care, right? If your baseball's not really your thing, you're just kind of there because, you know, mom and dad just kind of signed me up for the team, then you're probably not going to be as competitive.
Yeah,
right?
and I see that a whole lot, and especially in my field, man. With select baseball, you see kids. I would actually, you know what? I would venture to say that 60% of the kids that are playing or come out and try out whatever lessons don't want to be there.
Yeah.
Like, I think that it's that rampant now that parents feel like they have to get their kids in select baseball. They have to get a personal hitting instructor, you know, whatever. And the reason that I say that is because of the turnaround, right, of lessons and team guys and everything else. You got people that will come in and they'll do 2 months and, oh, I'm done.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I played one season. Oh, I didn't get, oh, I'm done. And so when you get that going on, number one, an 11, 12, 13-year-old kid isn't making that decision by himself. That's a parental decision. They're not getting what they want out of it. They're not, you know, getting the playing time or whatever it is. And so they're going to move to the next one and do this, that, and the other. And so what you teach is you teach non-commitment because you're not committed to it, right? And if you don't like your situation, you can just up and leave and go to another one. Yep. Which is the reality of select baseball, but that's not always the reality of life. And I think that as it's gone on, it's starting to trickle down to the players at an earlier age. The being unhappy and expecting immediate results for things and whatnot, because they can just up and leave whenever. And so the desire to challenge yourself, you know, I'm going to beat this guy out at this position. I'm going to get better. I'm not going to let this coach get to me. You know, I had bless his heart, he was one of the best high school coaches in Texas history. He's in the Hall of Fame. But my high school coach did not like me.
Mine either.
Yeah, just did. But mine didn't like me because I wasn't a star. He was the type of coach that he loved his guys and everybody. I mean, it's easy to love the really good ones, but he was just, I was undersized and he picked on me, right? But I used that. Yep. I'm going to show you, old man, that you're not going to break me. I'm going to come out here and you're going to have no choice but to put me on the infielder because I'm the best infielder you got, no matter what you want to do to me in practice or say to me under your breath or whatever else it is. And so finding that competitive fire around coaches that you may not perfectly hit it off with. You know, there's a lot to be said for that relationship for me now. Like, I can understand, hey, you know, me and this kid may knock heads a little bit, but if I can do some things differently than what that coach did for me, just because our personalities may not hit it off doesn't mean that I can't get the best out of that kid and, you know, I can't teach him a lot. Yep. And so I think that part of it, that I'm going to continue to work at this to prove you wrong or to beat this person out or whatever, is lost very young, because parents can take their kids and go wherever they want with them, and they do. If the parent's not getting their way, they're gone.
That's a great point. Yeah, there's always a way out, and my parents are going to bail me out. And just the constant search for, you know, instant gratification instead of, you know, development.
Yeah.
They don't value the development, because otherwise you just find one place that's got some good coaches, obviously, and then you stick it out and you stick through it and develop and get better and put in your work and do your stuff. And then it's just not really and that's where the mindset trickles down into the kids, because it's not there in the mindset of the parents. Right. Yeah. You are around your parents 99% of the time when you are that age, and from birth to, to high school, you're still living at home. You're still around your parents. And I'd say this just obviously from my experience, because my parents were very negative. They had very negative, just everyday thoughts were just negative, right? It's always seeing the negative in the situation. Always, if something doesn't go your way, it's somebody else's fault, kind of thing. So no accountability. That's huge. Nobody wants to take accountability. It's that coach's fault. The coach, this coach, this coach, that, the players, that, the umpire, this, the umpire, that. And it's never their fault. They never take accountability that they are part of everything that happens to them. You are part of the formula. So you change. If you develop, your results and the things around you are going to start to shift as well. And that's where the development comes in, valuing that.
Yeah. And being able to find a kid that can, has both that killer, I just call it killer instinct. That may be a little overboard, but that really, hyper competitive. But then also be able to be grounded and humble and a good teammate and everything else. And that's where, the good become great, right? You can have a hyper competitive guy, but if he's just an ass, then at the pro level, they get away with it a little more. Like Michael Jordan, he could be an ass to people a little bit. He was the best. But yeah.
It was to get guys better.
Yes, it was to get guys better. And for kids, they get big-headed and they get, I'm better than everybody and this, that, and the other. So being able to teach that, and that's the fun part for me, right, is being able to kind of mold those competitors. And, hey, when you're between the white lines, like the saying, this is what, but as soon as you step out of here, now we got to go back to being a good human. We got to go back to being a student. We got to go back to doing whatever it is. And so when you have those kids that don't have it, and they're those super, nice, respectful, humble, quiet kids, and you're like, look, man, I think you're a great human. I just need you to be a lot meaner on the field. Like, how do you teach? How do you break those kids out of that, is something that I think coaches are always struggling with. And if I had a magic wand, and there's some right now, I've got this 13-year-old group, dude, they are just sponges. They're just waiting to learn things. They're just looking at me like deer in headlights. Yep. And I've got two of them that it's literally like, I know what it is with them. They're terrified to make a mistake, right? They're just horrified to make a mistake. But at the same time, you can see it on their face. They're just like, I'm gonna tiptoe around all this, and I just want to, wave that magic wand and be like, compete. And
I hear you. Yeah.
And is it, I think it comes a little bit with age, but man, I think it's, there may be people that are going to argue with me and say, no, it's a learned behavior and all this. I think that the true competitors, I think it's more genetic. I think it's part of something you're born with. Because like I said, I don't remember ever not being competitive, and I was not raised in a competitive environment. I was the first son. I didn't have anybody to look up and try to be, I was the oldest. Yeah. My mom is super, super soft-spoken, like she, into sports and whatnot, but, didn't ever push me really hard.
Yeah.
And then you see these kids that have these ultra competitive parents, and they're just like, nope.
And that could be part of it too. They're influenced by that to kind of be the opposite.
Yeah.
Like it's the opposite of, it's reverse psychology, I guess.
Yeah.
Like you said,
I don't like it.
yeah. And part of it is definitely without a doubt genetic, because in program, a human thing, a human nature, because, hey, we have the instincts in us to survive. And I think that is part of it too, right? So like, talking about animals in the wild, right? If they are faced with fear or with a threat, they're either going to get that their fight or flight, right? Or they're going to fight. And a lot of kids I think it's part of that. It's connected, right? Where it's like they'd rather just get out of there.
Yeah.
Some
Oh,
are
for
going to
sure.
say, no, I'm going to try to eliminate this threat so that I can peacefully walk away and not have to deal with it.
Yep.
So
And feel better. Yeah.
yeah. And so that is, I think, definitely part of it. But of course, we're in a time where we don't face those types of threats. Like we're not going to encounter a lion or a bear, walking down the street. You know what I mean? Where you need to book it out of there or you need to fight. So also one thing too, I wanted to mention is like, so for myself, I had a killer instinct, as you described. But I had a tough time turning it off.
Yeah.
So I didn't have a killer instinct and then would go and just, and be and have good character traits. Right. Not that I wasn't a good guy or like a good friend to be around, a good person to be around. I always had like a good heart in that way, but like it was like the frustration would carry over, would linger into, if I had a bad game, though I was super competitive, if it didn't go well, then it's like, I'm in a bad mood for, till the next game.
Right.
Kind of, you don't have the ability to kind of like, okay, that was fun. The competition, we didn't win today, didn't do well. That's all right. I'm going to come back next time and I'm going to get that guy, and then just kind of go about your business and get your stuff done. So if I had been able to think that way, I definitely think I would have gotten better results, been more consistent. But like, well, one of the things, funny thing, and I don't know whether it made a difference or not, but I grew up watching Rocky, like literally on reruns. Like I would go to my dad's work before I was in school, and they would put Rocky 3 in the VCR. Kids don't know what those are. Yeah. And I would literally hit rerun. Like it would finish, I'd hit rewind and hit play. So I've literally watched Rocky and all the Rocky movies probably hundreds, maybe 1,000 times. Like no joke. That would do it. And I'm telling you, that type of program, it's conditioning. Yeah. And that's part of what's so important with like social media and the things that you consume. Not necessarily what you're doing physically, but what you're watching, what you're reading, what you're listening to is going to make a big difference, in my opinion, because I'd listen to Eye of the Tiger in the gym and just be like, I could pull out more energy when I didn't have it, and seeing myself envision, running on the treadmill. This is obviously when I'm older, but like running on the treadmill. And the last thing I want to do is be on the treadmill, but I needed to lose some weight. So I'd run for, 30 minutes and it would be like torture because you're just bored out of your mind. but I would do it. I'd picture myself running the bases. I'd picture myself, connecting on a home run. Like I'd picture myself dominating in my craft. And that would fuel me to keep pushing forward. And so like, of course, Rocky, the whole point of Rocky is the underdog story, right? The never giving up. He was the guy, he didn't always win, but he got back up and he went the distance no matter what. And I think that definitely helped. My dad was competitive also. So I think a combination of that, being around somebody who is competitive and was an athlete, certainly fueled it. And then I'm watching Rocky all the time, and it's like competitiveness from every angle, definitely played a part in my mentality. Though, like I said, at times it may have been a little aggressive, and times I needed to be more calm, especially hitting. It's very difficult to hit when you're emotional or you're being too overly aggressive. Every now and then at certain levels, lower levels, you can certainly open it up and just kind of cut it loose. But when it got to the higher levels, I failed to adjust. You get into pro ball, you're not going to be able to hit emotional.
Oh, there's no doubt. And I think that the older you get, the more that guys start to realize that it's,
Yeah.
I, you know, I love my job because I get to see them go through that growth process if the in the program, because our program starts at 13. We'll have them, they're 12 years old, but it's 13U baseball and then goes up, through the high school and into college. So seeing them go through not only the body maturation process, but also the mental maturation process. And you get these kids that are hyper competitive and, they get so mad that they cry and everything else, and trying to get those kids down a level to even keel playing. And then you've got those kids that it wouldn't matter if you told them that you were going to give them $1,000. If they ran hard, they're still going to give you 80% because they don't know how to compete, and trying to bring those kids, up. But then when they get, if they last and they get into that 16, 17-year-old level, then they start to realize, okay, I can't play. I need to be competing, but I can't play this game mad, or I can't play this game frustrated, or whatever it is. Like I have to be in control of what I'm doing to be able to compete with these guys. And that's a really fun, I guess, eye opener for the coach. Like when you're watching these guys that you've seen grow up, and all of a sudden emotionally it clicks at 16 or 17 years old, and you just see this player that was average become really good, or this really good player become next level, and it's all about how you compete, man. It really is. And that's one thing, before we get going here, I got to get learning how to compete properly isn't just wanting to win. And that's something that kids need to understand. Everybody wants to win. Nobody goes in, and it doesn't matter who you are. Nobody goes into a competition and goes, "Oh, I really don't care." Like they may say that, but if you are in a team, everybody, we're wired to want to win. But wanting to win and creating the environment, or your body preparing to win and doing all of the preparatory stuff to put yourself in the best chance to win, is the true competitor
Process.
And yeah, and
in a sense,
for kids, that's what we need to try to get into them. Is, I understand you want to be good, kid, but you're going to have to want to be good. And that is the process and the preparation and everything else. That isn't just showing up on Saturday hoping your team wins.
Yeah, absolutely. And I definitely think that like some people just don't want it. And it's like, that's totally fine. Baseball's not for everybody. It's like, you realize there's 7 billion people on the planet, and there's probably only like a few hundred, maybe 100 million people that play. It's very, very small. You know what I mean? You think about it that way, like maybe baseball's just not for you, and that's fine. And that's part of it. It's like, don't waste your time. If you are going to be out there, find it in you to, and I think everybody's got more competitiveness in them. It's just, like you said, it just hasn't been uncovered yet. Something would trigger it. It may take more than it takes some other guy, but there's certainly some more in there. If they're pushed to a certain point, they will get fired up, but it's just a matter of how deep do you have to dig to find it. And of course, that's the challenge of a coach. Right. And the difficulty. Some kids need to get picked up, and some kids need to like bring themselves down. The kids that kind of be in the middle are going to be the more consistent hitters, the more consistent just all around players, is because they don't have much of a spike or a dip in their emotions.
Right.
They can kind of hover somewhere in this middle range. They're going to be more consistent. And yeah, man, that's just the challenge of coaching, is that everybody is so different in that sense.
When you figure it out, or whenever you figure it out, and then
I'll let you know.
Whenever kids start coming with warning and instruction labels, we'll be good.
I wish I had them. I wish I had an instruction. Now, that's part of it, man. Just learning about yourself. And I think that that's a big thing too, is like kids need to be curious, how we work, how we function, as in themselves. How do they, the thinking about what you think about kind of stuff. That's the part that blew my mind and got me into the mental. Yeah.
That's yeah. Thinking about what you're thinking about, and trying to do that. And I like I said, we do need to go.
Yeah,
but,
no problem.
No, that trying to take that even into normal life. Like, I'm one of those guys, dude. I'm like, girlfriend used to tell me, live in the moment. Live in the moment. Try to figure out, enjoy this, that, and the other. And that's just not kind of how I roll. I don't really take much self-stop time during the day. Now at home, at night, when I'm, okay, I run back my entire day and do all of these things. But being able to be in that moment and be self-aware and think about what you're thinking about, for a young guy, man, that's got to be tough. Right.
Absolutely.
And
oh, yeah.
The earlier that you can do it, the earlier that you can become in tune with your feelings and how to control those feelings on the ball field and in life, man. It's you can't go wrong there.
Absolutely. And anything that's ever been accomplished by another human being, you can do it yourself, to at least to some degree. You may not be like Usain Bolt or, Mike Trout, but you can definitely be the best version of yourself. So like thinking of yourself as a tool, like you're an instrument, and you got to learn to play this instrument. And it starts here, right? If you want to play the guitar, well, learn to play this. Learn to play this, and you'll become a good guitar player. You'll become a better guitar player, a better baseball player, a better person, a better human being overall. But we need to learn how to play this instrument.